Tango 1 at the top. We are at Papa Coco. 10-4, Tango 1. You have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action, find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple. You're ruining the Tango 1 podcast. Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
All right, welcome everybody to Tango 1 Podcast. First episode in quite a while. First episode of 2024. One of my goals is to get this thing back up and running. And starting off with my buddy from Georgia, or not from Georgia, living in Georgia, Dan Skidmore. He's a fellow conjugate tactical instructor. He's a man of many hats, and most of all, he's the guy running the Carnivore challenge that I am currently jumping into. So thanks for jumping on with me, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always good to chat and spread the good word.
So let's just start right from there. Where are you at in the world right now, man? I feel like you're like everywhere all the time, and you're actually at home.
Well, if you're everywhere, then you can't be anywhere, right? So, so I take it one day at a time. And we actually just got back from Morocco. So I mentioned last time we were on, we've got a boutique hotel in Marrakesh, Morocco, and then we've got some roots here in Athens, Georgia. So my wife went to UGA, go Dogs, and so this area is super cool. We found an awesome gym to train at, and just a really cool community. And there's bits and pieces about the country that is like non-negotiables. And so we got back from Morocco about 2 months ago, but we bounced back and forth.
How long were you there this time?
We were there for 2 months, and as part of that, we did like some earthquake relief. I don't know if you remember seeing the huge earthquake that unfortunately had catastrophic damage. We did all right with it. We had some cracks in the walls, and were able to repair everything. No damage, no injuries, but not everybody made it out as we did. And so part of my thing was we were planning on doing this motorcycle ride across the country with a couple of my buddies out Midwest, like Kansas and Iowa area. And so it was basically a motorcycle ride on a 50cc moto from the Sahara Desert all the way, and you could plan your own route, but we ended up covering over 2,000 kilometers in less than a week. So
wow, you're a wild man. That's unreal. That's unreal.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So I got to put all the skills and tests, test out how you really do and how you train in austere environments. And so it was a great time.
That's amazing. Where did you did you sleep in houses? Did you throw up tents? What'd you do?
We did a little bit of both. So we actually went from like bare bones, sleeping on like a cot, staying under the stars, to like hostels where we're all in a room together, all the way to we eventually, our grand goal was to make it from the Sahara all the way out to the beach. And so we did, and we stayed in like a baller spot, which is pretty common for Morocco. And then we went surfing too. So hit the whole gambit of different experiences. So, we kind of checked all the blocks of, all right, we're really roughing it, and this is not even enjoyable, to, all right, this is pretty chill and living it up.
And how important there's I don't know if you've ever read the book by Michael Easter, Comfort Crisis, right?
Yeah.
Mike's a friend of mine. I did all my Jim Jones certifications with him. And
Nice.
He talks in that book about it's misogi.
Misogi, yep.
Men, you need to do something every so often to make sure that they still feel alive. And it's got to be the extreme part of that misogi is that you got to, the chance of death. How important do you think that is? You've got a son. Is that the kind of stuff you plan to instill?
Oh, absolutely. I love Michael's concept of the misogi as well. If you haven't read his new book, The Scarcity Brain, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's on my book. It's on my shelf here. It's next.
Man, it's so good. But the idea of just getting out, doing hard things that you have a real chance of failing at is incredibly important. And so when I was looking at this race in Morocco, is really a no fail mission. Really, you're going to figure it out. And so some catastrophic things happen. You break a clutch handle, your chain falls off, the bike breaks down, whatever, you got to figure it out. And so those little rites of passage are incredibly important to set up in kind of controlled environments. And the further you get to an uncontrolled environment is there's a lot to learn there, but the risk of death is always there. And that's one of the rules of the Misogi is don't die, which I can appreciate. But man, you got to get out and do hard things like that. And part of the reason that I even did this event with this group of guys was that they had proven themselves through doing Go Ruck events with me over the last couple of years. And they had done 12-hour challenges. They had done 24-hour challenges. And so, they had kind of got that suck factor, and they've proven that they can withstand some stress. And that's extremely important for everybody to do, because you're only as good as your last couple of days and last couple of reps. So yeah, man, can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, back in the day, I used to do these. I still do pretty awesome trips. So we used to have a little group of us that every year did backcountry trips in a canoe. Nice. Right? We started when we were 17 years old. I can't even believe my dad let me do this shit back then. We drive 24 hours up north into northern Ontario and do these trips. And then one time we brought one guy that we knew him, but we never did any kind of these trips with him. Man, I'm telling you, halfway through this trip, we're carrying his gear. We're listening to him bitch. We were never again, yeah. Go with somebody that I don't really know can make it. That was definitely learning factor there, man.
Well, sometimes that becomes the mission too. And that's the memory that you pull out of that is hey, all right, all this extra stuff that you weren't anticipating. It's handicapping yourself. So it can be fun as well. But it's all right, man, if you're going to go out and do hard things or group vacations with people, maybe make them do some hard things before.
Maybe a 2-day trip, maybe a 2-day trip, not a 7-day like we were doing, or 10 days, whatever that was back then.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's a really cool trip. I've heard of a bunch of northern trips like that where you kind of get into some water and raft down and carry the boats along the way. That's really cool.
Portage, right? French for carrying. That's what we would do. You get out, you carry your canoe, you carry your pack. Yeah. The canoe, it was funny too, because the canoe afforded you the ability to carry more gear than you really needed, some more comforts. But the problem was when you had to trek that a kilometer and a half, that's not a trek by any means, a very long ruck. But when you've got that plus the canoe on top of your head, you're kind of regretting bringing that little extra box of bacon or whatever you might have had, stashed in the bag. That's for sure.
We always got room for a bit more bacon.
Always room for more bacon. Yeah, you're right.
But also you're identifying the extreme need for good neck strength if you're carrying a boat on your head. This is another little thing. So my little brother's a SEAL, and that was one of the things that he sucked the most at. Well, he said sucked really bad was carrying the boats on their head and doing endless lunges. So how can you apply that kind of training to what you do on a normal basis, right? Neck strengthening, unilateral work. And because, man, there's nothing better than just getting outside and carrying heavy shit. That's end state. You got to do it. And if you're not training that way, you're leaving a lot on the table.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. We've really been, I personally, last time we talked, this is Dan's second time on the show, which is a rare. I think there's only 5 people that have been on more than one time. So nice. you're in you get the gold star. But sick. No, I really started to lean into that neck thing. I told you the one thing as I got into my 40s, started realizing, and I probably from years too of having all the heavy gear, dating myself, but man, our vests that we used to wear were 3 times the weight of the vest that they're carrying now. And not to I thought it was amazing then. It was way better than my predecessors had. But I think that all that stuff pulling on my shoulders, pulling on my neck for so many years that has been my biggest hiccup over the last 3-4 years is constant neck problem. And it just goes into your brain. So I really think if anybody's listening and whether you're my age, Dan's age, or younger, I would be training that neck, man, because it is the first thing to go. I think once you get over 40, they say all your stabilizers go. And then as you get older again, it actually, the body locks it in as you become older. It locks it in a bad way to stop your head from bouncing around so much. But leading into that next stuff, I've had I don't have nearly the pain that I had. I just do the simple stuff that you off some of your videos, just with the bands moving my head. And sometimes it's just laying flat on a bench and just using the weight of my own being there to go up and down. And it's made a huge difference for me.
Well, that's not too little of a bean you got going on there. It weighs at least like 10-pound brain. But man, yeah, it's super important and it gets overlooked so often. And I find myself screaming from the mountaintops of like, hey, it's super, it starts with posture and how you're addressing the load. And then just simple stuff. You don't need to be doing bridges. It's like super cringe to me if guys on their heads and like wrestlers, if you've built into that, great. Every time I do that, I get some kind of like compression and I start to feel like maybe my fingers go kind of numb. So I take it completely out of my training, and just movement is super important with that. But instead of like smashing it down, there's always time for that. But you got to build the musculature around it to be able to support it. So you talk about, hey, all right, are you putting a boat on your head or, a pack on your shoulders to compress everything? Why not just take all that off and work from very simple steps? So simply nodding. Hey, yes, we nod no, we nod maybe, and then get a bar in your hand and do some, I don't know, some shrugs.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. And so, yeah, I hope if anybody can get anything out of listening to this is like, you can get out of pain by actually adding some strength and mobility. So
yeah, man,
super
for sure. And then
super important.
aesthetically too, the neck, it starts to shrink, I feel like, when you get older. So it's like it keeps you looking like youthful because the jawline and all those things are some of the first things that when I lose weight, that's what this challenge, which we're going to get in talking, when I start to lose a little bit of weight, the first place I start to see is actually in my neck, when you'd rather see it, like you can't control it, you'd rather see it come from other spots. But those kind of things. And I think with the carries you talked about too, like that is like probably the primary form of like consistent cardio that we do in my gym. Hard to mimic, in a smaller space, but we make it work. But I think like people are really starting to see the value around the carries. I feel like they just thought it was something to do that sucked. And because we are, we talked about embracing the suck. I think people kind of thought that was just about embracing the suck and just a little bit of mindset. But it is really one of the best ways to just get in simple cardiovascular work with the advantage of getting some strength work in simultaneously, which I like to get more bang for my buck. When we're going to do cardio, we may as well get a little bit more for it.
Always, yeah, the economy of motion factor. I've got two questions for you on that.
I like that. Economy of motion. Good word. I like it.
Yeah, really. And it's the same kind of thing with like shooting drills, right? I want to be smooth with it. I want to get more efficiency as you get going through your training. And so there's some drawbacks to traditional training where you can just add in like our basics and it covers more ground. So my questions for you, you mentioned the jaw. Sure. Have you done any jaw training?
No, but you know what? You on your post, was it this morning or yesterday? I just read it this morning. Regardless, you talked about. I'm midway through my 24-hour fast right now. I'm on hour 13, and you talked about the jaw. And I'm like, you know what? I've seen this thing on Rogan, and you see it like now it'll pop all over my Instagram because my phone's in this room. But no, I have not. You're a believer in this? You use it?
Okay, so I have been using it. I got the device from, and there's a lot of different brands. The guy that came out with the strong neck thing, the little pad that goes on your head for the neck training. Right. He came out with his own little device, and it's just like a little chew toy that you're just chomping on. And so I started off like, a couple sets of 20, right? And then building it up to like, as I drive, I do it while I'm driving, just put it in your mouth and just chomp away for a couple big sets. And you start to feel the back of your head firing up. You start to feel the jaw, your neck, and it's wild. Like it's a different kind of pump. But part of the reason that I started doing it was for opening up the airways. So I read the book Breath by James Nestor, and I actually listened to it while I was doing that motorcycle ride through Morocco. And I found myself being conscious of the breath. But part of it is that with our diet now, all the food is soft. You're not chewing like you have been in the past. If you think about our ancestors, they'd be gnawing on a bone and tough, undercooked meat for hours. And that develops that jaw and airway and gets the facial structure in line so that you can breathe better. So I started doing this for a couple of different reasons, mainly for the airway testing and then also for neck development. And so, yeah, man, I've been doing it, and I strongly recommend just trying it out. It looks kind of silly, and you don't need to like do it in the comfort of your own home or in your car while you're driving along. But like, it's so simple. It's a simple exercise, but it's a super neglected area. And if you can, leave no stone unturned, well, I want to have a strong jaw so that if I get punched in the face, like you can increase your odds of not getting knocked out. But yeah, I've loved it.
Yeah, which one do you have?
It's called the strong.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, it's called the strong neck, the jaw builder. I don't even
Okay.
know like what the actual name for it is, but it's just a little piece of rubber that compresses just enough, and then it's going to bounce back. So hit it for 60 seconds on, take it out, let your jaw kind of recover a little bit, and then re-engage. And I found that like my capacity to smash through a steak has increased. I actually feel I swear to God, I feel like my neck feels a little bit more full, if that makes sense. But these kind of changes take time, and so over time, if you can add that in, it's a simple thing. But if you struggle with breathing, that's one of the number one things that can improve that, and you can actually reshape the format of your nasal passageways, and it starts with the mouth.
Right. So I read another post by you, and my wife had just started this. I commented in on there, and it was about the mouth taping. So
Mm.
she's for Christmas, like this is what fitness people do for each other, I guess, or health conscious people do. As that's what was in her stocking was mouth tape, the hostage
Mm.
stuff, and
Oh
the
yeah.
nasal strips. So she had a major neck surgery a few years ago, and so now she's into like 10 days into this mouth taping in a row, and she said she's like I'm not expecting these things do take time, but she's been getting some better sleeps. I tell you, because of the passageway and the neck surgery. Um, let's just say less noisy, so I don't completely out her. But like
Yeah.
I've been sleeping better as a result of it too. So I'm like curious, how long have you been doing this, or are you doing
Uh,
this?
I am doing it, yeah.
Okay.
So the days that I don't, I can tell a difference. And so I had a deviated septum. I had to have the surgery done, and it was game changing as well. But occasionally, like different positions, your mouth opens up. Well, it's super simple to just put a little strip on there, and then it retrains the jaw to stay where it needs to, and getting more breaths through your nose. So think about it like this: if you're sleeping 8 hours a day, that's a third of your life. That's a third of the breaths that you're taking throughout the day. You're getting it through your nasal passageways where you should be, because you really only should be breathing through your nose. Well, it's actually opening it up more and retraining that passageway to broaden and widen out, so you can bring in more and be able to recover better as well. So I've seen a big difference. My wife also, like, she's like punched me in my sleep, and I wake up and I'm like, what the heck? Like, what was that all about? But I've avoided that the last couple times when I've taped my mouth. And so, yeah, I recommend it to anybody that's struggling, and just try it out. It's a little uncomfortable. It can cause a little bit of panic, but at the same time, like, you should be able to slow that down and control it. So I can't recommend it enough.
Nice. I think I'm gonna give it a shot coming up soon. Hilarious story. Like we got the two kids in this house, and we have an old house, and man, it makes a lot of noise when the boys like bump their like they got bunks and they bump their heads off the walls or whatever the hell goes on. The other night I woke up like I'm sure you do every once in a while. I wake up like it's like somebody's coming in my house. That's the way I thought what was happening, right? And I'm looking from one of the many devices that are strewn about the house, and my wife is trying to calm me down to say like, hey, it's just the boys, but she's got that tape on. And she's like, like absolutely hilarious. So I'm like, I'm trying to get my head around what if both of us have our like mouth tape? We're gonna have zero ability to communicate, and the boys are gonna be in our room like having a nightmare, and
Yeah.
we're just gonna be making it worse because they're both of their parents are taped up laying in a bed. I don't know.
Silent but deadly. Yeah, there's nothing creepier. What's that? I think it was one of the Wolverine movies where the bad guy has like his no mouth, where he just can't talk. It's like sewn shut. It does kind of look like that, and it's kind of a creepy vibe. But I think it's performance enhancing, and so it's worth giving a try.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a shot. And let's talk about performance. So I told you guys like Dan's like we already said he's got the boutique hotel, former military guy. You used to have a gym, now you train. We should have showed those guys out too because I met them on my course. So where are you training? What's the gym? You got
So
Corey and Morgan, right?
yeah, I train here at Core Blend in Athens, Georgia, and it's a fantastic facility. Great environment, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, Corey's killing it on social media too, man. He's got like I love his videos. He's got the
Dude,
good like.
I saw Corey bench 315 for 10 yesterday, and then he
Oh
turned
my
around.
god.
Yeah, and then he turned around and hit 225 for 30 solid reps. And he just did one of the High Rocks events. So he transformed his training to being a cardio bunny and really putting in work there, to still maintaining a really awesome level of strength. And so it's
Clearly.
just a great environment to train in. And and we rely on so many things, body tempering, programming, but it's just right here in little old Athens, Georgia. And he's expanded, got an empire now of different locations. And so, yeah, where did you guys meet up at?
Arizona. We were on the same, I've been involved with the group Business of Strength, guys from Varsity House Gym that did all the Jim Jones with me. So I was really kind of like their pilot project. We go to these Jim Jones events, and all of us kind of just had garage gyms, or we're kind of like dudes that just open gyms, but really didn't have any business sense. And these guys, instead of talking about training, people would be all over them about how do you do marketing? How do you do sales? And they built a business out of this. It's funny how the world works that way. And then Corey and I were on the same seminar. I was up there speaking on it, and they were there. And then he said Athens, and I was like, oh my God, what are the chances? And then I dropped your name, and they're like, no, he comes to the gym. I'm like, oh my God, what small world this is.
Yeah, we actually, my wife went to UGA, so she's from here, and we met through some other folks. But the first introduction was that they came out with the Forge. Are you familiar with the Forge?
No.
All right, so he developed this device for body tempering, and body tempering is an amazing technique that you can do before and after training to prep and recover the muscles. And it was really brought on back mainstream by Donnie Thompson, Mr. 3000, one of two guys to ever hit a 3,000-pound powerlifting total. And he had to do this by figuring out how to become more resilient at a later age. And so body tempering is just putting a piece of steel on your muscles. They're going to respond, they're going to relax, they're going to prep better. And so Corey and his guys developed this thing where it's plate loadable, and it's a very awesome piece of equipment that you can use. It's super versatile. But my wife was like, hey, I brought you this thing. And I came back from a trip, and she cracked the trunk of the car and was like, check this out. And I was like, whoa, this is legit. And this is 2017, 18 timeframe. And so when I saw it, I knew that Corey and I would eventually be good bros. So
this is what you brought to Columbus.
So that's funny. One of the only pieces of equipment, I only saw a couple pieces of equipment in the new West Side Barbell gym, right? Their facility there. We went to the
facility.
Gym.
It wasn't really the gym, yeah.
They have everything, but their facility where they're moving everything into, in the shrine to Louis. And I saw a couple pieces of equipment. I saw an old school squat safety bar. I saw some jujitsu mats. I saw a fat bell, and then I saw a Donnie Thompson body tempering roller. And so I immediately was like, oh, well, this is awesome. All the best things in the world. And then started talking and teaching a little bit about body tempering. And it's just how do you avoid getting injured over time? You got to have a little bit of life insurance, pay a little bit in preparation and recovery so that you're not pulling something, or you're prepping properly, but also hitting that Control Alt Save button on your performance. And I think that body tempering helps do that in a way that, rolling around on a foam roller just doesn't do as well. And so when I saw that, the Rogue body tempering device, which is just that's great. That's on one side. But if you can load this thing up with a 25-pound plate on both sides, all of a sudden it's 90 pounds. If you can put a little more on it, it stacks like a barbell. And so you can really, I've put 400 pounds on my back, on my legs, on my posterior chain, and it feels amazing. And so I had to show a couple of the guys hey guys, you can do this. And it's going to keep you healthy, I think.
It's funny. I've been having I have the hard foam roller, and I have my kids lay on it, basically. They stack themselves on it because when you rolled that thing on me, I was like, this is so much different. It was actually so much better. You're using, between the compression of, I guess, my body pushing into the floor and then the weight on the top, I felt I was so much more effective, and I could almost feel, that curvature that goes from your spine, between your neck and, your lumbar, that part too. I almost feel it just relax and open back up. And that's just with that. So yeah, I can only imagine if you can adding weight to those devices that you were showing me. I think those would be amazing.
Yeah, you have no option to relent under 200 pounds or 300 pounds or 400 pounds. And so, put that on your Achilles tendons, and it's going to go even better, right? You just feel like everything relax. And so I always like to start from the ground up, set it on your Achilles for a couple minutes and let it sink in, and then roll it up or behind your knees and do your hamstrings and your butt and your back. And then, man, there's no feeling like it. And Donnie actually, it's funny, Donnie's first thing, it was just a piece of steel, a 135-pound chunk. and he called it the ex-wife. And if you think about it, like, if you've had somebody like your kids, or, if you can talk somebody into standing on your back, it usually feels pretty good.
Right.
And so it's like a Thai massage, but for bros in the gym that have like a piece of steel, and we're like, yeah. It's extremely restorative. So anybody that's listening to this, like, give it a try. Have somebody that's strong enough to pick it up and off of you, because things are dangerous, but also like getting hurt during training because you're not preparing properly is more dangerous. So body tempering, check it out.
Nice. Yeah. So man, every January I know some people are not about these resolutions, things like that. For me, man, I always use it as a good opportunity to kind of reset, like lock in some weaknesses, set some goals for the year and some immediate goals. So this year, I pretty much always do. I was going to kick off January with some kind of like, I'm going to, basically stick on a meal plan of some sort. And I'm like going through my head what I'm going to do some other extracurricular activities above and beyond my normal training, and just to dial it in. I find that if I really dial in everything, then everything actually around me always improves. So if I can dial in, like when I did 75 hard, I think I was the best my business was running, because I don't know why I was so freaking focused. So anyways, this I see your post about the Carnivore challenge, and I'm like, oh, this sounds perfect, because that's the way I was leaning anyway. I was going to follow the Carnivore, and then to join a group of people doing it. You're going to get better results from me when I'm in there and I'm accountable to some other people, even if it is kind of like, strangers. I don't know anybody on there, I don't think, except for you. But it's, where did this come from? And tell me just about the challenge, because I know you're trying to recruit some more. What was it? Force multiply was the,
that's it. That's part of
it. Was the game yesterday.
Yep. All right. So it started off as kind of like an inside joke, as most things do. And I was hitting up one of my buddies who's already he's already a high performer, eats really well. And I was like, hey, what do you think about the Carnivore diet? You want to give it a try? And I think so many people were curious about it. You've heard about it on the Joe Rogan podcast. You've heard about it from Jordan Peterson, maybe, for all these different health reasons. And so, there's that little bit of curiosity, and you almost have this inclination that you're like, oh, I know this is going to work, but it's going to be a little difficult, because what you're currently doing is, you feel good from the carbs, and you've been told, hey, I need this rice. I need to eat my veggies to be feeling awesome. And so I put it out to him, and he was like, yeah, well, sure. Why not? Like, whatever, we're crushing it. And then I just decided, hey, I'll put this out to everybody and see if there's any takers, and make it available, and start with why. So, that's another fantastic book that you can get into, but start with the why that you're doing everything. So I put out this 5 W's, gave them, hey, why we're doing this, the who, what, when, where, and how, and then just let it rock. And then if you're interested in it, you've heard about it, maybe you want to try it, why not start on the 1st or start on the 31st is like, because anything worth doing is worth doing starting now. So we started this little support group, and my DSO, so direct support operators, is my group of guys that I train. If you want to do something crazy, you want to take on a 200-mile race, or do a powerlifting meet, or maybe become a Green Beret, or go into special operations. Like, I got a small group of guys that I can give real attention to, and help mentor them through. So that's my training side page. And so, hey, we'll open up the doors. Come in, I'll talk to you, give you some movement, mindset, nutrition, recovery, tactics, techniques, and procedures. And it's up to you to really do it. But like you said, man, if you've got some people that you're accountable to, even if you don't know anybody, there's positive benefits in that. And so that's what we're in the midst of. We've got some other things like fasting, right? Everybody's curious about fasting. It's kind of a hot topic, but nobody's making money from doing it, because you can't really sell anything. And so I said, all right, let's try this out. On week 1, we're going to do 1 day. On week 2, I'm going to bump it up to 2 days. On week 3, we're going 3 days. I don't care if you go 3 days straight, but I'm going to do 2 days on, 1 day off. And then week 4, we're going to go 4 days of fasting. Well, that can also reduce your grocery bill of the month by 33%. You're not eating a third of the days. There you go.
I never thought of it like that until you posted it. And I said that to my wife. I'm like, this is actually kind of this guy, the product you're selling is saving me money. What? Right.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
no, I never thought of it like that. And we do eat a ton of meat here with my boys too. They devour stuff. And it's like, I'm not going to make my, 9-year-old fast, but like the point is, man, like that is a massive savings. I made last night, like I covered that grill in meat, and I'm not touching any of it for 24 hours. If Papa Bear's not jumping in there and getting his, like there's gonna be a lot of food left over, a lot more it's gonna go a lot further. That's one great way of looking at it. Obviously,
Yep.
there's a lot of benefits to that too. And what I like about the carnivore so far, and I've done the elimination, for lack of a better word, elimination diet in the past, and like what I like about carnivore is like, man, like I feel like you and I, we know a little bit about nutrition with our backgrounds and our, our passions. But like when if we believe in this, we actually ask somebody else to do it. There's like, it's so simple. Like, can I eat this or this? Like, the answer to that is yes or no. And it's a very clear, right?
Mhm.
Maybe there's the little bit of argument with like honey, or, I saw a few people about, olive oil or things like that. But like for the most part, it's pretty black and white. Like eat this, not this, and let's see how you feel from it.
Right. Yeah. And there is a gray zone, right? And like there's a spectrum, right? Left side, right side. And usually what feels good is somewhere in the middle. But you don't know until you try it. Then everybody's got questions. Hey, can I drink coffee? Can I do this? Can I eat honey? What about these like pork rinds that are coming out of a bag that are cooked in bacon fat? And it's like, okay, guys, if you got to ask, it's probably a no. But at the same time,
Yes.
if you've got abs and you're a high performer already, like I'm not going to tell you to not eat fruit. I'm not going to tell you to not eat honey. Like, but you know what you need to stay away from. And one of my vices is like ice cream or chocolate chip cookies. And I've convinced myself that hey, I'm putting out. I got good body composition. I need this stuff. At what detriment? And we tell ourselves these little lies, and you start to see people like justifying things, and that was kind of where I left the paleo thing. Is when you start making paleo brownies, like, sorry dude, you're gonna stay fat, you're gonna like and stay sick. And so if we can get away from that and just say nope, I'm gonna put on the discipline of the answer is hey, if it didn't come from an animal, if it's not fresh, if it's bagged, boxed, or like packaged in a certain way, just leave it aside and see how you feel for this amount of time. It's not that long, and but at the same time, I want it to be accessible to people so that they can join along and make it part of the challenge, because you don't want to cut anybody out in black and white. So yeah,
Except for coffee, man. Coffee is not. I don't care
yeah,
what rules you're following. That's where I'm not. That's where I'm not jumping on board. The coffee comes
no,
from the bean. I'm still drinking that. But
yeah,
like,
I don't hate myself enough to not drink coffee.
yeah, that the elimination one I told you about before, coffee was part of it. It was like all the nightshades coffee. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm fully expecting to get those headaches, but I haven't been getting it. But leading into this, I was basically doing carnivore with like some fruit. The odds like sweet potato booked on like a heavy workout, like kind of bookended in on there. And I was
Nice,
feeling great from it. And that's why I was interested how I would feel going all in. And I'm really feeling like I keep saying about, the 45 and then wear and tear. Like the knuckles and stuff is where I'm starting to feel the difference already. Like I feel less bloating. Like I
good,
feel less stiff in my hands. And then like you said with the chocolate chip cookies and things, it's such a slippery slope. Like, like, yeah, sure, one chocolate chip cookie in a week, or, even two or three, or like, but then that's what happens. It's like, oh yeah, two or three. And then it's like, now you're just, you just have a drink on Saturday, but now you're having a drink on Monday and Wednesday as well. Cause you will just find your brain, no matter who you are, will start to make excuses to accept it. As soon as you let that one little cookie in, I'm not saying nobody should be that restrictive, but I know for myself, that's where it starts to lead.
exactly,
It'd be a
yeah.
bag of chips watching the Michigan game on Monday night. Like that's where it would go, right?
Yep. It is. You start making those little concessions for yourself. But like you said, man, and it's interesting. You said when you focus on everything, it gets better. Whereas instinctually, I'd say, well, just change one thing at a time. Like commit to one little thing. But for guys like, if you're serious about it, like go big. And so nutrition is always the hardest part, I think, like selling anybody on a diet, because it takes the most discipline. It's easy to say, hey, all right, go crush yourself on this workout, move through it. But then it's you're tied to it emotionally if you start talking about food. And so getting a little bit of that buy-in right away of, hey, this could change your life if you just give it a try. And now like we're 5-6 days into it, like, and it feels great. You start to feel these things. So it's going to be really interesting to see people over the course of the 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or, if it takes 2 months to really dial in a habit, like those are the guys that can commit to it. And today's post was all about like, hey, what's tempting you? And are you still on board? Like, are you making it? And what are you struggling with? Because I think that we're all going to be struggling with similar things. And it goes back to, hey, just don't do it. And rely on the team, and then own up to what you agreed to do when you were feeling good about it.
Yeah, I feel like that, like what you're saying about focusing everywhere. It's just I feel so dialed in that structure has created like a lot more freedom. That structure and discipline. I'm reading. I've always tried to read, but it's always been more for like when I read, I just read it because I like it. But now it's
Mhm.
like I'm focusing to sit down and read 10 pages in the morning, 10 pages at lunch, 10 pages at night. Like I'm doing all these extra things that should be taking up more of my time, but it's actually feel like I'm freeing up more of my time. Making sure I get out 20 minutes outside movement is kind of like the goal on top of my gym stuff every day. And who's benefiting from that? My kids. I have been outside every day since New Year's with my kids, and instead of just doing it when I can, I'm doing it because it's like an SOP, and my
Mhm.
kids are, they're loving it. I try to ask my kid every day, one of my kids, like, what was your favorite part of today? My son, playing football with you, dad, outside, and that was my 20 minutes of movement. It wasn't rocking around. It was like built towards my life, but I still got like, I was out there, I was huffing and puffing, running around with kids, and it's awesome, man. So I feel, and then the other thing with this carnivore is all the kind of different nutrition plans I've done. You want to talk about the easiest one to meal prep for? It's so easy. I'm not thinking
Simple.
about nothing. Like you just
Yeah.
cook all the meat, man. Like cook all the
Yeah.
meat, have it ready to go. And if you have the opportunity to cook it fresh, even better. But for me, it's usually like a batch cook of a bunch of meat, just grab it and go.
Yeah. You bring up the kids. I think there's a lot of benefits to the kids seeing you more disciplined, but uh, they kind of perceive it in different ways. So how are you handling like their diet as well? Or are they kind of on board with the carnivore? I mean, if they're not doing the fasting, that's cool. But how have you adapted that to family life?
So my wife and I, we generally eat very, very clean around here. Like, there's treats and we're not like not giving them cookies or anything, but like for the most part, they eat exactly how we eat. My oldest, we always joked, we've called him carnivore since he was a kid. He devours protein. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, like the kid's got abs and he's down there literally right now. He just banged out 25 push-ups and 50 squats. He's 10 years old. Like
Nice.
like that's what he does in the morning. And I think you do
Yes.
see like I don't force this stuff upon them. I don't force like my youngest who comes into the gym, he goes right to the whiteboard and he writes his own workout down and he does it. Like I
Mm.
think like he is just seeing that is the way we live. And like the youngest one seems to operate really well by having a good mix of like sweet potatoes and meat, and he likes his greens. So as long as it's a healthy choice, it's pretty much the answer is never no, right?
Hmm.
Like it's like, dad, can I have this? Dad, can I have we got the can I have this kind of yogurt, or can I have this like jerky or something? It's like pretty much yes, like all the time. It's the treats where they know that it's not going to be always be a yes. And then when they ask, most kids, you'll see them go back and forth to that bowl, but they'll get their one treat and they understand that is what it is. It's a treat, not meant to be gluttony, just stuffing them all down their throats. It's been pretty awesome to watch that part of it, especially as they're getting a little bit older now, which you're going to
Hmm.
be running into soon. It's awesome. Like they say, it keeps getting better, man.
Yeah. My little guy, he prefers to meat. He's like, steak and salmon for
Yeah.
breakfast. He doesn't want all that other stuff. And then I had some other people like, how do you get your kids to do that? And so you hear this a lot of like, oh, my kids are really picky eaters. Well, nobody's picky when you're hungry, right? And so like that intentional fast, not starving your kids, but making things available to them. Like my dad used to say, well, if you're not going to have this apple, like you're not that hungry. Because if you've gone 12, 16, 24 hours, man, I want to smash anything. I don't care what it is. Like, give me some fuel. And we've become so complacent with our eating. It's so available, thankfully, right? That it is. But you've glossed over that, like that period of hunger, because a lot of kids don't face that, or the answer to it is really easy. Like, oh, well, if I'm hungry, I'm going to go get some cereal. Man, like that's even worse. And so all those good choices are going to be positive, and then getting the kids like, hey, you've only got so many options, but don't let them kind of bail out on like candy or honey buns, right? I mean, that's like just poisoning your kids, and at some level, like I don't want to call it child abuse, but like irresponsible for not setting your little human up for success, because they're eventually not going to have your guidance, and they're going to have to make good choices on their own. And so that's a big thing that we're trying to do, and instill those healthy choices. So he reaches for the steak and not the sugar coated lies.
and pump them on it too. Like that's what we
Yeah.
find is like when they grab that steak, like when they want extras of steak, it's like, every once in a while I'm like, oh God, the kid wants $15 more of meat right now. Right. But it's like, yeah, man, of course you can have more. I love that you're eating that. And like, it really really positive that too. And there are things that they clearly each don't like. Like they're the two different kids, and there's clearly things, and I'm not gonna sit them and like, sit here until it's done type thing. But it's like the option is not to replace it with like a peanut butter and jam sandwich made on
Yeah.
white Wonder Bread. It's just not going to be in our house. My one son, we like oatmeal around here now and then, and my son hates it. My youngest hates it. My oldest loves it. It's like, okay, like we're not going to force this on you. Like, fine, you want an egg? I'll make you an egg if you want. Like, and those are the options, like to me. But I really don't believe in sitting down and making two different. When people go on these meal plans and they're making their own meal and they're making something else for their whole family, like that's when it becomes cumbersome to you. And what are you showing? Like you're showing like this, then you're showing this is a diet, not real food. That's I guess where I'm going with that. This is like how we eat rather than this is a diet. And you guys are just going to keep eating all this, and I'll eat this for a bit. And then when I'm happy that I have, I've lost 2 inches off my waist, I'm going to go back to eting the way you guys are. I just don't think that's the way we should be teaching people.
No, you got to lead the way and lead it by example. And hopefully you got a partner that can be on board with that. Now in the last couple of years has been like the most critical. Oh, good morning.
As we talk about her.
Yeah, she's rolling in.
All good things.
Out of the bear cave.
Man, mouth tape on.
No, it's removed. But having somebody that's like not anti healthy change or anti experimentation, right? You got to try things, even if it's 30 days is nothing, right? It's a month, and you can skin it a lot of different ways. But like, the benefits are obvious. There's no real downside besides like, oh, people say, oh, I have diarrhea or I feel sluggish, but there's a reason for all that stuff. Is like your machine wasn't primed to take that fuel as it was, even though it's high octane fuel. Like something wasn't calibrated properly, and so you're feeling those things, but they all dial back in after a couple days. If you can get past that suck, like you're gonna feel way better. And I hear this over and over and over again. If you can get past that little rough spot, it'll be better on the other side.
Yeah, I'm seeing anybody in our group who ends up listening to this, like that group that you're running and I'm involved in there. Like, I really think like if I've seen the people with the cramping, I'm expecting the headaches are probably going to start to pop in there. Like, cutting out sugar. Like I can tell you from experience, you get through those 3 or 4 days, you're good, you're gold. It's not bad. It's just, it sucks for a couple of days and that's it. But that's a good indicator that you took out some shitty shit out of your diet.
Right. Or, people are not used to adding some salt to their diet. Salt which is huge. And so like adding some sodium, adding some magnesium, add those little micronutrients that are going to help stave off those negative side effects. So that's another thing for me is like, I'm not doing, going 30 days without creatine. Like you want to take it forever.
I dropped it too.
And even though we know the positive health benefits, like, see how it goes without it. Actually, you're probably, with as much meat as you're probably getting enough. So it's not going to be the end all be all. But you got to remove those things. And I think there's benefit in like cycle on, cycle off. Not that it's like scientifically that you have to by any means, but salt is probably the number one thing. So if you're cramping up, adding salt, or I like to add baking soda. So sodium bicarbonate. Have you ever played around with baking soda?
No.
Oh, bro, I'm about to turn you on to a performance enhancer. And this is legit science. So doing like, it basically, I'm going to bro science up here, but you're basically delaying the pump. So in those like, CrossFit style workouts where you just blow up, your body is becoming more basic from the bicarbonate to stave off that lactic acid buildup. And they've done a bunch of research on it. It's pretty well established at this point. There's companies that make like a baking soda rub for muscle aches. And so I like that as well. But just adding like a little bit you can add it to your coffee or add it to your water, your morning water. And it really does make it, I feel it.
Really?
I feel a big difference. Yes.
Man, I mean, I've used it for bee stings. That's the only thing I've used baking soda for, is to to pull out the stinger.
Very good with that. And like you put it on stains or, put it on as a cleaning agent, but just throw a little bit into your water and your pre-workout drink, a lot of pre-workouts actually already have it in there, but sodium bicarbonate and it's baking soda.
Really? I never thought of this. Okay, cool.
Dude,
I'm making that note right now.
I'll send you. I mean, you can look it up, and there's actual like legit studies and like anecdotally, you do a lot. I do a lot of jujitsu, train it, 4 or 5 days a week, and sometimes you get pumped, right? Because you're gripping, you're pulling, and so my arms and bicep tendons would get really like kind of locked up, and you're in that typically like a 5, 6, maybe a 10-minute round, and so you feel that lactic acid buildup. And when I do take it versus when I don't take it, it's night and day difference. So give it a try.
Yeah, man. I will for sure. Yeah, the salt I think is like, it's just people were grown up. Like I can speak from when I was growing up, is like salt is bad, salt is bad. So really trying to reverse some of those things in people's brains is a challenge. But it's getting out there. The more information that gets out there, the better. And I think once people like experiment with it, I got salt in my water right now, and it just makes, I find that I feel like I actually need it now. Like it's like I don't feel hydrated. I feel, when you're constantly chasing that, like you're drinking water, but you're not feeling hydrated. Like that's the difference. It feels like it makes the water stick, for lack of, you want to talk about bro science. There it is for you. That makes the water stick for me.
Right. Yeah. Think about it. Like you got an ocean inside of you. Right. What's that? It's got all these little micronutrients, and mainly like sodium, magnesium, potassium. We need to put these stuff back in, because when you're sweating, it's not pure distilled water. Like you're losing all that stuff. And so even by breathing, you're releasing all those nutrients as well. And so it's too easy to add back in. You don't need to go crazy on it, just a pinch, but it should always be a pinch. But then, like I'll add a couple of little splash to the coffee. If you don't already do your food, play around with that. But if you're going to complain about diarrhea or cramping or headaches, like start there and get those balances correct. And if it's too much, you're just going to urinate it out anyways. Like, so you're going to find that happy medium. But instead of just complaining about all these bad things happening, like real simple, add some Redmond salt. It's from Utah. It's probably pretty pure. Like throw it in there. Some Celtic sea salt. Like you can't go wrong. No, we're not talking about white table salt. Like kick that to the side, but add in some good salts, and you'll be all right.
More salt, less texting. That was the advice you provided.
Yeah. The guy's like, oh, my hands are cramping. All right, bro. Like, put your phone down and like drink some pull security and hydrate. Like you're gonna be all right.
And let's talk about Go Ruck for a second, man. Because last time we got off, a couple of my members, I didn't realize knew you, which is pretty cool, because they're like, oh man, you had the Go Ruck guy on there. I'm like, yeah.
Nice.
So and then they're like, so they want to get a group together to go to Michigan. But the Michigan event, which is like only a couple hours from here, was on Canadian Thanksgiving.
Oh
yeah. When do you have any coming to Michigan anytime soon? Or is there anything big that you want to get out there from that avenue?
We could. It was a huge announcement that Go Ruck and CrossFit just partnered up. So I think Go Ruck's going to be like the new apparel and shoe sponsor of CrossFit, and maybe
really,
that's
big huge.
News. Yeah, it's pretty big for the brand, kicking No Bull out and getting after some quality gear. So I've done over 200 events. They're going to keep doing them. Unfortunately, there's an app right now that like is not user friendly at all. So people are like, but at the end of the day, like if you want to get out and do hard things with your bros and put together a mission profile that's going to potentially change lives and be really difficult, and put together that misogi for people because they need to recheck how, like, once in a while you got to do something that really sucks. And typically, like, 8 to 12 to 24 hours of, a guided pain train can really help with that. So, it's a ever changing landscape with that as it is. But man, like, just get out and do hard things. It's if you want to put together events, like they're out there, and training opportunities. That's one thing. Like even with the conjugate tactical guys, like the coaches course, what I'm going to try to get with Jason is like, hey, do a morning ruck with everybody. Like everybody needs that GPP. And we talked about doing it last time, but nobody showed up because it's the hardest thing, but it's what most people need anyways, is like get from point A to point B. Do I need more speed squats? Yeah, that's great. But what do you really need on the job? Well, I need to run to the top of this building and have that capacity. And it's a good like social fitness activity as well. And you mentioned this earlier too about like carrying things, about how it's hard. Well, how many times have you ever rode to the fight? You know, like, yeah, the rower, you can always get deep into the suck pain cave on the Echo bike, but the Echo bike doesn't train grip. It doesn't train midline stability necessarily. So bring it all the way back to, hey, let's take these backpacks and maybe this telephone pole and all this stuff, and we're going to take it where it needs to go. And so reframing that level of fitness that Go Ruck has done with, you know, rucking special operations themed, like team building endurance challenges modeled after soft training. You're in special operations training, you're never like, all right, guys, hey, we're gonna row here, or we're gonna do this machine. No, man, you're only as strong as your hands and your feet and the decisions that you can make under duress. And so there's a really good opportunity to practice that in real time with real consequences with these events. So that's my spiel.
All right, we're gonna get some bros down for the next one. That's for sure.
Good deal, man. Or just have us up. Like, you can set up custom events. You can contact, you know, and you can run your own event. And it really, like, I've done dozens of these for companies. Like, hey, you fly right to the neighborhood, or hey, we're going to go to this other city, and there's no better way to explore another city or to learn your own backyard even better, but than to come and put something on. So, man, if you guys want to do something up there, like, I don't know how Canada is with immigration nowadays, but I'll stay strapped and get up there.
Just we got to sneak you through on a boat. Detroit's right here behind. Oh, you can't see. I got the backup thing. Detroit's right behind me. We can get you here.
Yeah, man, I love it.
You guys got to put this mask on.
my family's all from Kalamazoo, and so I spent
that's so close.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Michigan as a kid, but I've loved doing events in Detroit because it's always like it's an austere environment, and if you go to one side of the city, you never know what you're going to get. But I've had some great times out there. Did a Cinco de Mayo event with a good friend of mine, and we just had a blast in the city.
Yeah, man, we love Detroit. Go Lions, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been awesome catching up with you, brother, and I appreciate you jumping me in on your group, your DSO group. It's been fun. It's been, you know what, I find that one of the things I look for now is, I think when you're in the leadership position in the gym and leadership positions at home, it's nice to be, you know, a follower. It's nice to have some direction and just be part of a group and have somebody kind of tell me what to do. It's been nice. So I appreciate you doing that for me. And we're loving it, man. My wife's loving it too.
Anything you want to see differently with the challenge stuff you need to work on? How'd your fitness tests go? Have you knocked them out?
My fitness test, I was not very impressed with my bike. And that used to be a Jim Jones one, 300 FY. It was like 10 minutes, but it was the old aerodynamics, so the calories, like 300 was actually achievable. I think it's very similar to the body, what you said, get body weight in cals. So I think that's bang on. 300, like in the new bikes would be near impossible for a dude my size. But like the getting around to like aiming for that 190, oh my God, I almost killed myself the other day. I got off that bike at like 160 and I'm like, what happened? Like just trying to and you know, like that fun game that goes on in your head. You're like, all right, minute one, all I got to do is average 20 cals per minute. Minute one, no problem. Minute two, you're already starting negotiating. Like, oh, if I only get 17, what will that get me to? And then the next thing you know it, especially in the middle of the race, you know, I'm getting 14, 12 and just falling further from my goal. So it was fun. It sucked. And it also bothered me, and it still bothered me. I might hit that back out today. I plan to do the burpee one today. I feel like that'll be a good one to do while I'm fasted because it's, you know, should only be 4 or 5 minutes of work. So yeah, It's been fun, man. I'm having fun, and it's fun to like that kind of stuff too. Like that's the stuff I'm usually I'm doling out and I'm coaching through. So it's been fun to like be like, oh fuck this guy, he's gonna make me do this. The 5 mile ruck, I love that one. That's always one of my favorites, but that's one I'm comfortable with, so it didn't bother me too much. It just rucked and ran. But that was a good one too. But my quads were banged up from that one, I'll tell you. The flat earth around here, thank God too.
Well, I added that 10 minutes on the bike specifically from the Jim Jones stuff, you know, reading through the poison book, and like I love that test. Get as close as you can, or just, you know, go. And a lot of people with their new gym memberships is like, I'll walk in and you might as well give it a try if your gym has one. If not, maybe go check out a gym that does have it. But the alternate test of that is 10 minutes of sandbag get ups, and it hits different. All you need is a suitcase or a sandbag, and just stand up, lay down and stand up with it 10 minutes. That's an old school test from the old Operator Ugly PT test. You ever do
we
this
used
one?
to do them with the heavy bag. We used to do that heavy. It was heavy bag get ups.
Yeah,
It's brutal, man.
It's great.
Brutal.
So that came originally from the old Mountain Athlete, which is Mountain Tactical Institute, from their PT test, which is a phenomenal test for operators. It's really well rounded, I think. And then simple stuff like, hey, 50 burpees over a sandbag for time, GPP, right? Get down, get up, and it's a little sprint. Max effort pull-ups, and then some clean and jerks, 5 minutes of clean and jerks, and then a 5 mile run or walk. I made it a run because I wanted to go slick. I haven't run 5 miles in a little while. It's a capacity test. It's also like one of the gates for special forces guys. So Green Berets going through, you got to get a 5 miler in under a certain amount of time. And so it's always a good benchmark. But then I wanted to make it accessible. So if you do screw up, if Tony screws up and it's like, man, I just smashed that honey bun, but it's not on the Carnivore. Well, that's okay, man. Like, fall behind, you're not going to get left behind, but there's got to be a little bit of buy-in to it. So if you screw up, you got to do a 5 miler with 25 pounds to get back with the crew. Okay. And this is a totally like self-imposed thing. We're on the honor system here. I'm not going to check up on you, but if you stray from the way, you got to do something hard to recheck. And it's only going to take an hour, right? It should only take an hour. But if you screw up once, it's 25 pounds. You screw up twice, it's 50 pounds. Screw up 3 times, 75. And then if you screw up 4 times, I'm going to come to your house, punch you in the face, and then we're going to do a 100-mile 5 miler. Yeah. So,
the intensity in your eyes there, I feel like you actually might show up at some place. I'm not screwing up. I won't make you cross the border, man.
Well, I want everybody to know that, like, hey, there's a way that you can get back in the fight. Everybody has you might have had a bad day, a moment of weakness, but it's going to cost something. It always does. There's always consequences. And I don't want to, so maybe I do want to drive up and punch you in the head, but we definitely don't want to do that 5 miles with 100 pounds. So avoid that at all costs. It's only a month.
Absolutely. I had my son, my youngest, it was his birthday, January 1st. So I promised him I would wait until January 2nd because he wanted to have, his request was donuts for his birthday. So we smashed some donuts. I'm going a day longer. That was my deal with him. So, it was fucking well worth it because the smile on his face when we smashed those big donuts together was and the happiness in my mind. I was like, oh, my last meal. But
yeah. I haven't thought about what my last meal was or my first, like, what are you going to break with? What's worth it to change this up? And that'll be on the mindset.
I feel like all I'm gonna want is some blueberries or like a grapefruit or something. Like I have grapefruit or blueberries almost every morning, and I'm like, I think that's the thing that I might want. I don't think it's really gonna be a donut or something.
Yeah, blueberries are a good choice for sure.
Yeah, man, this has been awesome. It's been so good to catch up with you, man, and I love seeing that you're crushing it, and you and your wife, you guys are. It's awesome to see people that are living it how I believe people should be living it. So I love it, man. Good on you guys.
Thanks, man. Thanks for joining in, and I appreciate you reaching out, and it's always good to connect with guys that are walking a similar path. So anytime you need something, bro, I'm here as an asset to help you guys out.
Yeah, right back at you, man. Appreciate it. Just gonna hit that, and everybody, thanks for listening in. Hope you enjoyed the first episode of 2024. Another part of what Dan helped me push. The message from you got this thing rolling. So thank you.
Sick.
Now's the time to do more and be more.